For decades, Family Guy and The Simpsons have sat on top of the world of animated TV, and so it comes as no surprise that fans of the show and critics have long debated which cartoon reigns supreme, and which is, well, just another meme template. Naturally, this rivalry has sparked plenty of shade, most of which, unsurprisingly, comes from the side of Family Guy. From cheeky digs at Homer to full-on roasting sessions that leave Springfield in ashes, Family Guy has held no punches when it comes to The Simpsons. So, buckle up as we dive into all the times Family Guy took shots at The Simpsons and didn't hold back. First on our list is the Family Guy episode Cool Hand Peter, where Peter, Joe, Cleveland, and Quagmire decide that suburbia is just too much to handle, and so it's time for a road trip. Their destination? The Deep South, a land of barbecue, blues, and apparently cops who skipped the ethics chapter in their law enforcement manuals. It all starts out innocent enough. Well, as innocent as it gets for this crew. But in true Family Guy fashion, things take a sharp detour into chaos when they're pulled over by some southern sheriffs. Which anyone with a hint of self-preservation knows, it's best to just nod at everything they say. But then, there's Peter, who, well, it's pretty much Peter.
Don't worry about it, guys. I read nowhere that southern sheriffs really want to be talked down to by big-shot northerners.
Knowing Peter, he must have read that one off the bottom of a beer bottle. From there, things spiral into cartoonish absurdity. The gang finds themselves in front of a jury that, at first glance, seems like a standard trial scene. But since Family Guy doesn't do anything standard, instead of an old jury, we see something that makes us do a double take. The jury is none other than the yellow-skinned, spiky-haired cast of The Simpsons in a slightly different form. Peter, ever the oblivious optimist, is the first to point out what he assumes is a silver lining.
Well, at least they're a jury of our peers.
But as Joe quickly points out,
I don't think they see it that way, Peter.
He ends up being right, as the result of the trial is Peter, Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland receiving 2 weeks in prison, which they aren't too keen about.
I can't believe this. 2 weeks in prison on trumped-up charges. That trial was a total sham.
Yeah, I knew we were in trouble the minute I saw the jury.
A scene that very much screams Family Guy, as we all know the show to be quite self-aware and to often break the fourth wall. So it's no surprise that they are aware enough to poke fun at the rivalry between them and The Simpsons. In this case, Family Guy being judged by the Simpson yardstick and being looked at as not being quote-unquote not on the same level as The Simpsons. On a side note, the episode is the second time Peter, Joe, Cleveland, and Quagmire hit the road together since Cleveland left to star in The Cleveland Show. So, bringing the boys back together to take a swipe at The Simpsons is something you very much expect from Family Guy. Next up, we dive into the Family Guy episode, Ratings Guy, where Peter Griffin does what he does best, breaking things he doesn't understand and then somehow making it worse.
What the hell's going on? What do you mean I ruined television?
I mean, do you really want me to answer that question? Anyway, in this episode, Peter Griffin, the self-proclaimed guy who ruined television, stands shoulder to shoulder with everyone's favorite Springfield buffoon, Homer J. Simpson. So, after a casual family outing to the local fire station, because what else screams quality time like watching the fire trucks, the Griffins return home to some surprising news. They've been chosen to become a Nielsen family. Translation, they're now in charge of deciding what the rest of America watches. Think of it as the TV equivalent of giving Peter the nuclear codes.
More boxes, more power. And I got some ideas to make TV better.
Translation, I have a brain-dead idea that's probably going to end badly. Naturally, Peter handles this newfound power with all the grace of a bull in a china shop. His brilliant ideas include pitching ridiculous shows to Tom Tucker, because apparently Quahog needed a series about coats, and stealing hundreds of Nielsen boxes to rig the ratings in favor of his own terrible preferences. Unsurprisingly, Peter's Nielsen box heist doesn't go unnoticed. His antics spiral so out of control that he earns the title of Quahog's most hated man. Even his loyal buddies Joe, Cleveland, and Quagmire want nothing to do with him. And when Quagmire, of all people, is judging your decisions, you know you've messed up. Outcast and desperate, Peter heads to the Television Producers Guild to make amends, where he crosses paths with none other than Homer Simpson, who reminds Peter that he's not the only TV dad with a knack for disaster.
I'm Peter Griffin. I'm the guy who ruined television, and I'm the guy who's gonna fix it.
Guys, I broke television, and now you have to help me fix it.
Yeah, looks like this is one we beat you to.
The scene, of course, is a reference to the debate about whether Family Guy borrows too much from The Simpsons. Only this time around, Peter flips the script. For once, the Griffins have done something before The Simpsons. Not that it's much to brag about when it involves breaking TV. In the end, Peter somehow fixes the mess he created, because, in case you haven't noticed, things tend to go the way of the star of the show. The Nielsen boxes are magically restored, TV is saved, and all is right in Quahog again. For now, from subtle jabs and light shades, we move on to moments where Family Guy doesn't hold back in roasting The Simpsons, like in 8 Simple Rules for Buying My Teenage Daughter. And yes, that is an episode title you'd only see in Family Guy. The plot? Well, let's just say, it's a typical Griffin family train wreck. However, the real treasure in this episode isn't Peter's obvious moral bankruptcy, but the jab at one of The Simpsons' most iconic moments, the Mr. Plow jingle.
Hello, I'm Mr. Plow. Are you tired of having your hands cut off by snowblowers?
Yep, that's the one. So the episode kicks off with Peter being Peter, irresponsible and impulsive. After forgetting his wallet at the pharmacy, Mort Goldman offers him a tab, and I think we know where this is all headed. What follows is a spending spree so absurd it feels like a deleted subplot from Wolf of Wall Street. Peter racks up a $34,000 bill on, among other things, gallons of Epicac for a family vomiting contest. Trust me, don't ask. And how does Peter plan to pay off this small nation's GDP in debt? Not by working harder or selling his own stuff, of course. Nope. He sells Meg to the Goldmans because why make one brain-dead decision when you can make 2? While Meg navigates her forced engagement to Mort's son Neil, Stewie, however, is busy stealing the spotlight with his subplot. After falling head over heels for a new babysitter, LaDawn, Stewie spirals into full-blown obsession. But his antics, kidnapping her boyfriend and drugging LaDawn, are just part of the backdrop for one of Stewie's most savage moments, his takedown of Homer Simpson's beloved Mr. Plow jingle.
Oh, Mr. Plow, that's my name. That name again is Mr. Plow.
For those unfamiliar, or those who somehow avoided it being stuck in their heads for days, Homer Simpson's Mr. Plow jingle was quite the hit back in the day. And while many fans couldn't help but hum to the tone as they walked it down the street, it's fair to say that Stewie wasn't one of these people. With all the disdain his tiny British accented voice can muster, he absolutely demolishes the people who worship the jingle like it's the second coming of Mozart. You know, the ones who hum it while standing in line at Taco Bell at 1 a.m.? Yeah, not my words, just Stewie's.
Yes, we all love Mr. Plow. Oh, you've got the song memorized, do you? So does everyone else. That is exactly the kind of idiot you see at Taco Bell at 1 in the morning.
I mean, he does have a point. Now, beyond such a direct roast, Stewie's rant also marks the first time Family Guy directly references The Simpsons. So you can say this was the shot that set things in motion. Every now and then, Family Guy gets quite clever in its writing that you can't help but admire the writers of the show. And in The Juice is Loose, they find quite the creative way to shade 2 characters who share the same surname.
Peter, he murdered 2 people.
What?
He brutally killed his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman.
O.J. Simpson?
Yes.
Yes, it was, Peter. Yes, it was. And I think we already know who else gets referenced in this episode. The madness kicks off with Peter discovering a winning raffle ticket from 1989 while digging around for tools. And not only just any raffle ticket, this one grants him the once-in-a-lifetime chance to play golf with the one and only O.J. Simpson. Yes, that O.J. Simpson. At first, Peter's thrilled, but his excitement quickly turns into hesitation when he hears about Simpson's infamous past. However, instead of pulling out of the meetup, he's convinced by Joe to get a confession out of O.J. via a hidden recorder. One foiled plan later, and Peter begins to feel bad for O.J. after hearing O.J. talk about how hard it is to be constantly judged. And so, convinced that O.J. is misunderstood, or maybe just being his usual gullible self, Peter does what only Peter Griffin would do. He befriends O.J. and invites him to Quahog to meet his family.
Hey, everybody, look who I brought home. 10,000 rushing yards, 6 Pro Bowls, 2 arrests, and no convictions. Orenthal James Simpson.
Hi, Griffins.
Yeah, not exactly what you'd call a welcome surprise. The reactions are, well, exactly what you would expect. Lois is immediately suspicious, Brian, always ready to play the moral watchdog, is downright furious, and Meg and Chris, they're somewhere between terrified and confused. But the real trouble begins when word spread around town that O.J. Simpson is in Quahog, which of course earns Peter the ire of many residents, one of them being Mayor Adam West. West, who says,
"We don't want you in our town, Simpson. We don't love you like we did in 1993.
Naturally, everyone assumes he's talking to O.J., but then the camera pans over and it turns out he's addressing none other than Homer Simpson. Classic Family Guy bait and switch, and I dare say one of the more clever jabs in the show, especially when you consider that by 1993, The Simpsons were quite easily on top of the cartoon world, just like O.J. was on top of his game. And now, according to Family Guy, that crown's gotten a little rusty. Still in the realm of brutal jabs, the next on our list from the episode Lois Kills Stewie packs quite the gut punch for the Simpson fans. This episode is the unhinged continuation of Stewie Kills Lois, a storyline that could pass for a plot of the Avengers. We've got Lois miraculously surviving her untimely demise thanks to the healing hands of, wait for it, a merman. Then there's her memory being jogged in the middle of a white supremacist rally. I mean, sure, why not? If you came for logic, you're definitely watching the wrong show. But what really puts the cherry on this chaotic Sunday is Stewie's dark turn as a world-dominating maniac.
Lest you be considering any sort of uprising, I warn you, I am quite prepared to make an example of any undesirable elements. And don't think I don't know who you are.
Jeez, talk about being thorough. In a scene cut out from the original broadcast, though lovingly preserved on the Season 6 DVD, Stewie channels his inner Broadway villain, parodies the Littlest song from The Mikado, and delivers a not-so-subtle jab at The Simpsons.
The guy who watched The Simpsons back in 1994 and won't admit the damn thing isn't funny anymore.
And that, my friends, is the kind of roast that leaves a mark. Just like the last roast, this is one of the few that name drops The Simpsons directly, so there's no mistake as to who the shot was aimed at. So far, all the roasts we've seen range from mild to harsh, and since we know Family Guy is all about pushing boundaries, it comes as no surprise that there are times when even fans thought a roast pretty much went too far, which so happens to be the case with the gag from Season 6, Episode 2, which pretty much got the show in trouble. The episode begins with Brian in the middle of a heated argument with Peter and Lois about his questionable relationship with Jillian, who, in case you didn't know, is his much younger girlfriend. Already sus from the start. Even crazier in the background, there's a banner quietly promoting The Simpsons, which at first glance seems like a simple hat tip to the long-running yellow-skinned rival. But just when you think you're still in the same territory, Quagmire bursts into the scene chasing after, wait for it, Marge Simpson. And I think we all know what happens in that context. Now, I'm no expert in cartoon writing, but it's safe to say that this episode was written with a bit too much venom aimed at The Simpsons. And as if that wasn't unhinged enough, the dialogue that follows is the kind of thing that makes you want to Google how to bleach your brain.
See, that wasn't so bad, was it?
Ooh, I gotta say, that was fantastic.
What do you say we go back to your place for round 2?
Sounds good to me.
Yep, totally normal conversation there. But of course, Family Guy isn't known for hitting the brakes just when they should, and since they've already crossed a line, I guess the writers decided to just sprint full speed ahead into absolutely unhinged territory and damn the rest. Because later in the episode, the scene cuts to the Simpson household, where Quagmire's antics take a deeply unsettling turn. Off-screen, he and Marge continue their unholy entanglement, at which point Homer walks in on the situation, and, let's just say, things ended quite badly.
Get off my wife!
Oh my god, oh my god!
Ugh, you shot my homie! I'm calling the police!
Ay, caramba. In the end, Fox refused to air the gag in the episode's original broadcast for obvious reasons. The gag was then included in Adult Swim broadcasts and the DVD, and I think I speak for everyone when I say it's best left off mainstream television. Next up, we're shifting gears to an episode that keeps it PG. Well, as PG as Family Guy ever gets. In the Season 5 gem, Mother Trucker, the story branches out with two wild subplots. Peter grappling with his mom's love life, and Stewie and Brian taking on the world of radio broadcasting. Of course, it wouldn't be Family Guy without a good old-fashioned swipe at The Simpsons, and boy, do they take quite the hit. But to fully understand this jab, we need to travel back to the 90s when Bart was basically a walking corporate billboard, with one of the most infamous endorsements being that of Butterfinger during the 90s.
Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
Fans at the time weren't quite pleased, and so trust Family Guy to bring it back to the table for no reason other than stirring up a little trouble, which they do in typical Family Guy style, with an overcomplicated plot that ends with Stewie and Brian nearly destroying Quahog's radio scene.
I'm more of a sellout than you were when you did those Butterfinger commercials.
Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger. Do.
Turns out, Stewie might just be the biggest Simpson hater after all. Not all roasts are straightforward attacks, as Family Guy has this knack for worshipping its inspirations and dragging them through the mud, all in the same breath. And in Dial Meg for Murder, it's safe to say they did just that.
I met Wesley Snipes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, and you know what's funny? He was inmate 57 too.
At first glance, this episode seems like a wild ride about Meg going full rogue, but hidden in all the chaos is a sneaky roast of The Simpsons that you might miss if you're not paying attention. So, the episode starts with a pretty absurd premise, as most Family Guy episodes do. Peter, in typical Peter fashion, decides he's ready to join the rodeo. Because, of course he does. His training includes using Meg and Chris as makeshift bulls, and while that's not exactly shocking behavior for Peter, it's a setup for what's to come. Fast forward through Meg's questionable choices, and trust me, there's a lot of them, and she ends up in prison for breaking her boyfriend out of jail. Luckily for her, she is able to turn this around toward the end of the episode, at which point we get this moment with her at the dinner table having a rare peace discussion with Peter.
He was inmate 57. See, he did a movie called Passenger 57.
Ah, well, terrific. Always end on a strong joke.
Basically hinting in not-so-subtle fashion that The Simpsons suffer from this mistake. Ironically, by roasting The Simpsons, Family Guy actually lands a strong joke themselves. Safe to say, it's one of their better executed roasts. And last but far from being least, we round things off with what is easily the biggest cartoon crossover in TV history. In Season 13, Episode 1, The Simpsons Guy.
Yay! A crossover always brings out the best in each show!
Oh, Chris, you sweet summer child. If by best, you mean passive-aggressive pot shots that'll make both fandoms squirm in their seats, then I guess you're pretty spot on. This hour-long episode was less of a love letter and more of a love-hate manifesto shared between both shows. I mean, you had the courthouse filled with characters sitting beside counterparts. Family Guy's James Woods meeting The Simpsons' James Woods.
You lived in Springfield?
Yeah, I worked at the Quickie Mart, researching a role.
Sure you did. We also have the Pawtucket Patriot Ale ripping off Duff in a very obvious way. And who can forget Peter's direct jab at Homer and The Simpsons?
I think I speak for all of us when I say I am over The Simpsons.
Well, what are you saying?
I'm saying The Simpsons suck.
Harsh? Pretty much. So it all starts with Peter Griffin, whose controversial comic strip lands the family in hot water with the internet. Fleeing an angry mob, they find themselves stranded in Springfield, which is where the chaos and the roasting truly begins. When the Griffins cross paths with Homer Simpson, it's the beginning of a bromance, or maybe a rivalry. That spans the entire episode. Homer's grand welcome, as you'd imagine, involves introducing Peter to the joy of donuts. But in true Family Guy fashion, it doesn't take long for the episode to veer into parody territory. The Simpsons clan welcomes the Griffins into their home, setting the stage for some hilarious parallels and jabs. Bart's slingshot and Stewie's diabolical mind collide in a way that leaves poor Nelson rethinking his life choices. Meanwhile, Lisa discovers Meg's hidden talent for the saxophone, but not before reminding her she'll probably never be as good as Springfield's prodigy.
Was that good?
It was okay, but it would be a shame to waste such great butcher's arms on a musical instrument.
Yep, someone is clearly jealous, folks. But it's not all mashups and fun, as we're dealing with Family Guy here. So of course, some roasts are on the way. One of the episode's most cutting roasts comes when Peter and Homer's budding friendship hits a roadblock: beer. Homer's beloved Duff is pitted against Peter's Pawtucket Patriot Ale, and it is from this point that things go sour.
This beer tastes exactly like Duff. It's just a lousy ripoff.
Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa! It's not a rip-off of Duff. It may have been inspired by Duff, but I like to think it goes in a different direction.
Sure, pretty much what Zuckerberg said about Threads. One thing leads to another, and after a court case that's 2 parts ridiculous, 2 parts tense, Homer and Peter decide to settle things the old-fashioned way, through a brawl. And if you thought Peter's chicken brawls were over the top, this showdown takes it to a whole new level as their simple bout escalates into a Springfield-wide demolition derby. I mean, is it really a cartoon show if you don't have sound effects like that? The two destroy everything in their path, from Moe's Tavern to the Springfield nuclear power plant. And when they fall into the reactor and gain temporary superpowers, well, it is as you'd expect from 2 complete buffoons getting their hands on Compound V. By the end of the episode, as Peter and Homer begrudgingly part ways, it's hard not to see the 2 shows as reflections of each other. And while the episode wasn't exactly a fan favorite, I think, after seeing radioactive Homer and Peter duking it out, who cares?
Worst chicken fight ever.
Or maybe not. And there you have it. Family Guy taking aim at The Simpsons in ways only Family Guy can. So, which roast left you laughing or cringing the most? Or did we miss one of your favorites? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more cartoon chaos. See you next time.